the nature of women and why modern men misunderstand. Dynamics between men and women have long been a subject of fascination, conflict, and misunderstanding. Throughout history, societal structures, cultural narratives, and philosophical perspectives have shaped how men perceive women and, consequently, how relationships unfold. In modern times, men often fail in romantic relationships due to a fundamental misapprehension of women's nature, influenced by romanticized ideals, societal shifts, and a lack of self-possession. This video explores the intricate nature of women, why modern men struggle to understand it, and how Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophical insights illuminate these dynamics. Drawing on the provided points, we will examine the emotional mastery of women, the misconceptions men hold, and Nietzsche's critical perspective on gender dynamics, ultimately arguing that true relational success lies in self-discipline, authenticity, and mutual respect. Women's emotional mastery and the art of submission. While men historically focused on physical prowess and material wealth to establish dominance, women developed a subtler but equally potent form of influence, emotional mastery. The notion that when men were busy showing off their muscles and wealth, women mastered the art of submission is not about weakness but about strategic adaptation. Women, often relegated to subordinate roles in patriarchal societies, honed the ability to navigate power dynamics through emotional intelligence and influence. This so-called submission is a calculated stance, allowing women to exert control in intimate relationships where emotional stakes are high. Consider the question, who usually controls intimate relationships? Historically and in modern contexts, women often hold significant sway in the emotional realm. Through subtle cues, emotional signaling, and relational navigation, women can steer the course of relationships. A woman's tears, for instance, are often misread by men as surrender or weakness. In reality, as the point suggests, a woman's tears don't mean surrender and submission, but rather the beginning of negotiations and victory. This emotional expression can shift the dynamic, compelling men to respond, often believing they have won when, in fact, they are being guided toward a woman's desired outcome. This misperception leads to a critical misunderstanding. Men view women as weak or submissive creatures. This error stems from men's focus on overt power, physical strength, wealth, or status, while undervaluing the covert power of emotional influence. Women's ability to master this domain reflects not inferiority, but a strategic response to societal constraints, positioning them as formidable negotiators in relationships. Nietzsche's perspective on women's nature. Friedrich Nietzsche, the 19th century philosopher, offers a provocative lens through which to view gender dynamics. Nietzsche did not hate women, as some misinterpret, but was critical of how men idealize them, turning them into angels rather than human beings. In Thus Spoke Zarathustra and Beyond Good and Evil, Nietzsche critiques the romanticized, sentimental view of women propagated by men. He argues that such idealization strips women of their complexity, reducing them to caricatures that serve men's egos rather than reflecting their true nature. Nietzsche warns of the brutality of women's revenge, suggesting that women, when wronged, wield a fierce and calculated form of retribution, often through emotional or relational means. This aligns with the idea that women's power lies in emotional mastery. For Nietzsche, women are not inherently evil, nor are men inherently cowardly, but the interplay of power dynamics reveals human flaws on both sides. He challenges the notion that so-called love is often desire, arguing that what men call love is frequently a projection of their own needs and fantasies, rather than a genuine connection with women as individuals. Nietzsche's famous aphorism, "When you stare long into the abyss also gazes back at you," beyond good and evil, can be applied to gender relations. Men who obsessively seek to dominate or idealize women risk losing themselves in the process, as they fail to see women's true depth and power. This dynamic contributes to men's relational failures, as they collapse emotionally when women leave, unable to cope with the loss of their idealized projections. Why men fail in relationships. Modern men often fail in relationships because they are either domineering or begging, as the provided points suggest. Domineering men seek to control women through force or manipulation, while those who beg seek approval, undermining their own strength. Both approaches stem from a lack of self-possession, which is the ability to balance strength and vulnerability without losing one's core identity. Women, as the points note, don't respect weakness, but rather controlled weakness. A man who can acknowledge vulnerability while maintaining discipline and purpose is more likely to earn respect and foster a meaningful connection. The romantic narratives perpetuated by literature and media exacerbate these failures. Men, brainwashed by romantic novels, often chase an idealized version of love that prioritizes women's approval over self-respect. The point that the more you need her approval, the less she likes you underscores this dynamic. Women are drawn to men who have something more important than women in their lives, a purpose, passion, or mission that defines them independently. This aligns with the observation that the greatest lovers in history were men of value, thinkers, warriors, and artists. Figures like Socrates, Caesar, or Michelangelo were compelling not because they pandered to women, but because they embodied purpose and authenticity. Moreover, men's tendency to make women their target sets them up for failure. As the point states, when a man makes a woman his target, he already loses. But when he controls himself and disciplines himself, he wins. This reflects the importance of self-mastery over external validation. Women respond to strength that doesn't pose a threat, a presence that doesn't stifle. A man who is consistent, respects a woman's femininity, and maintains his own identity strikes the balance that fosters mutual attraction and respect. Women's strategic nature and emotional power. Women's nature is often a solution to the problem of occupying a seemingly weaker position in societal hierarchies. The point that women understand the value of scarcity better than any strategist highlights their ability to leverage emotional and relational scarcity to maintain influence. By selectively offering affection, attention, or vulnerability, women create a dynamic where men willingly pay the price and call it love. This is not manipulation in a malicious sense, but a reflection of women's adeptness at navigating power imbalances. The idea that true power lies in emotional mastery is central to understanding women's nature. While men built empires through conquest and construction, women were busy mastering emotional influence. This influence allows women to shape relationships and outcomes in ways that men often fail to recognize. For example, women's preference for a man who makes life meaningful over one who merely makes life easier reflects their desire for depth and purpose in relationships. A man who offers emotional stability and authenticity, rather than material comfort alone, aligns with this preference. Modern men's missteps and the path to success. Modern men's failures in relationships stem from a lack of understanding of these dynamics. The point that men evaluate themselves based on women's acceptance, like addicts waiting for their next fix, captures the cycle of dependency that undermines many relationships. Men who prioritize women's approval over their own values lose the very qualities that make them attractive. Conversely, the only love a man has is the one that gives him freedom, a love rooted in mutual respect and independence rather than possession or neediness. Women, as the points suggest, don't want an ideal man, but a real man. The idealized man of romantic fantasies, flawless, endlessly accommodating, lacks the authenticity that women value. Similarly, women don't want someone who mirrors their emotional pattern, but rather a man who is consistent and respects their femininity. This balance requires men to cultivate self-possession, defined as the ability to maintain strength and purpose while being attuned to a woman's emotional needs. Nietzsche's critique and its modern relevance. Nietzsche's insights remain strikingly relevant to modern gender dynamics. His disdain for men's lies about women critiques the tendency to idealize or demonize them rather than engage with their humanity. By turning women into angels, men create unrealistic expectations that collapse under the weight of reality, leading to emotional devastation when relationships end. Nietzsche's emphasis on authenticity and self-overcoming applies to both genders. Men must overcome their need for validation, and women must be recognized as complex agents rather than stereotypes. His warning about the brutality of women's revenge serves as a reminder that women's emotional power is not to be underestimated. When men misstep through domination or weakness, they risk triggering a response that can be both subtle and devastating. Yet Nietzsche's philosophy also offers a path forward. By embracing self-discipline and authenticity, men can engage with women as equals, fostering relationships built on mutual respect rather than illusion. Understanding the truth about women requires moving beyond stereotypes, romanticized ideals, and societal narratives to see them as complex, strategic, and emotionally intelligent individuals. Drawing from the earlier discussion and expanding on it, this response will delve deeper into key aspects of women's nature, how men often misinterpret it, and practical ways to align with it for healthier relationships. The focus will be on emotional mastery, strategic adaptation, authenticity, and mutual respect, while incorporating Nietzsche's philosophical insights to frame the discussion. 1. Recognizing women's emotional mastery. Women's strength often lies in their emotional intelligence, which allows them to navigate relationships with a depth that men frequently underestimate. The idea that women have mastered the art of submission is not about passivity, but about strategic influence. Historically, societal structures limited women's access to overt power, for example, political or physical dominance, so they developed covert power through emotional and relational means. This manifests in several ways. Emotional influence. Women often control the emotional climate of relationships. For example, a woman's tears or silence can shift a man's behavior, not because she is weak, but because she understands how emotional cues impact others. Men often misread this as vulnerability when it's a calculated move to initiate negotiations or achieve a desired outcome. Scarcity as power. Women intuitively grasp the value of scarcity, as noted in the point that women understand the value of scarcity better than any strategist. By selectively offering affection, attention, or approval, women create a dynamic where men invest more, often mistaking this investment for love. This isn't deceit, but a natural response to power imbalances. Non-threatening strength. Women respond to strength that doesn't pose a threat, a presence that doesn't stifle. They value men who are confident and purposeful without being domineering, as this allows for emotional safety and mutual respect. How to understand this truth? To grasp women's emotional mastery, men must observe rather than assume. Pay attention to subtle cues, tone, body language, and timing rather than taking emotional expressions at face value. Recognize that women's emotional responses are often strategic, not erratic. For example, when a woman withdraws or expresses distress, consider what she might be communicating about her needs or boundaries, rather than assuming weakness. 2. Moving beyond misconceptions. Men's misunderstandings of women often stem from societal narratives that paint women as either fragile angels or manipulative villains. Nietzsche's critique is particularly relevant here. He despised men's lies about women that turned them into idealized figures rather than complex humans. These misconceptions lead to two common pitfalls: idealization. Men influenced by romantic novels or media often see women as embodiments of purity or perfection, leading to unrealistic expectations. When women reveal their human flaws or assert their agency, men feel betrayed, as seen in the point that men collapse when a woman leaves them because their idealized image shatters. Underestimation. Conversely, men may perceive women as weak or submissive due to their emotional expressiveness. This ignores the point that women's nature is the solution to the problem of taking a weak position. Women's ability to wield influence from a seemingly subordinate role is a testament to their resilience and adaptability. How to understand this truth? Challenge preconceived notions by engaging with women as individuals, not archetypes. Nietzsche's warning that when you stare long into the abyss also gazes back at you applies here. Obsessing over idealized or demonized images of women distorts reality and blinds men to their true nature. Instead, Approach interactions with curiosity, asking questions to understand a woman's values, fears, and goals. Avoid projecting fantasies or fears onto her. 3. Understanding women's preferences. Women's attraction is often misunderstood because men focus on external markers of success, wealth, status, looks while overlooking what truly resonates. Key points from the earlier discussion highlight what women value. Purpose over approval. Women are drawn to men who have something more important than women in their lives. This could be a career, creative pursuit, or a personal mission. A man with purpose is attractive because he isn't dependent on a woman's approval for his self-worth. As noted in The More You Need Her Approval, the less she likes you. Authenticity over perfection. Women don't want an ideal man, but a real man. Flaws, when owned with confidence, are more compelling than a polished facade. The greatest lovers in history were thinkers, warriors, and artists, not because they were perfect, but because they embodied authentic value. Meaning over ease. Women prefer a man who makes life meaningful over one who merely makes life easier. This means offering emotional depth, shared values, and a vision for life rather than just material comfort. How to understand this truth? Reflect on what drives you independently of relationships. Cultivate a sense of purpose, whether through work, hobbies, or personal growth, that defines you beyond a woman's validation. When interacting with women, focus on shared values and emotional connection rather than trying to impress with superficial achievements. For example, instead of boasting about wealth, share a story about a challenge you overcame, revealing your resilience and character. 4. Nietzsche's insights on gender dynamics. Nietzsche's philosophy provides a framework for understanding women's nature without romantic distortion. He argued that men's idealization of women as angelic or submissive masks their complexity and agency. In Beyond Good and Evil, he writes, "Woman is more truthful than man, but her truth is of a different kind." This suggests that women's truth lies in their ability to navigate emotional and relational realities with clarity, even if it appears contradictory to men's logic-driven perspective. Nietzsche's warning about the brutality of women's revenge highlights their capacity for emotional power. When wronged, women may not retaliate physically, but can wield devastating relational consequences, withdrawing affection, asserting independence, or exposing a man's weaknesses. This isn't evil, but a natural response to betrayal or disrespect. As Nietzsche implies, men's cowardice lies in failing to confront their own role in these dynamics. His critique of love as often desire is also crucial. Men frequently mistake their longing for possession or validation as love, which clouds their ability to see women clearly. True love, for Nietzsche, involves mutual respect and self-overcoming, aligning with the point that the only love a man has is the one that gives him freedom. This freedom comes from both partners maintaining their individuality while fostering connection. How to understand this truth? Study Nietzsche's works, particularly Thus Spoke Zarathustra and Beyond Good and Evil, to grasp his view of human nature as a struggle for authenticity. Apply this to relationships by prioritizing self-mastery over control or neediness. Recognize that women's emotional responses, even when intense, are often rooted in a desire for respect and understand, not malice. When conflicts arise, ask yourself, am I projecting my desires onto her, or am I seeing her as she is? 5. Practical steps for men to align with women's nature. To understand and connect with women authentically, men must cultivate self-possession and emotional awareness. Here are actionable steps based on the discussed points. Develop self-possession. The rare man strikes a balance between strength and vulnerability, neither domineering or begging. Practice self-discipline by setting personal goals, for example, fitness, career, or creative projects, and sticking to them. This builds confidence that doesn't rely on external validation. Respect emotional complexity. When a woman expresses emotions, don't assume weakness or try to fix it. Listen actively and ask open-ended questions like, "What's behind this for you?" to understand her perspective. This respects her emotional intelligence and fosters trust. Embrace authenticity. Be honest about your flaws and aspirations. Instead of hiding insecurities, share them in a way that shows self-awareness, like, "I'm working on being more patient, and here's how I'm doing it." This aligns with women's preference for a real man. Prioritize purpose. Identify what makes your life meaningful, whether it's a career, a passion, or a cause, and pursue it relentlessly. This not only makes you more attractive, but also ensures you don't lose yourself in a relationship. Avoid idealization. When you catch yourself idealizing a woman, for example, thinking she's perfect or the one, pause and reflect on her as a human with strengths, flaws, and agency. This prevents the emotional collapse described when men collapse when a woman leaves them. Balance, strength, and respect. Show strength through consistency and reliability, but pair it with respect for her autonomy. For example, if she needs space, give it without resentment, signaling confidence in yourself and trust in her. 6. Why modern men struggle and how to overcome it. Modern men often fail because they are brainwashed by romantic novels and media that promote a transactional view of love, where women's approval is the ultimate prize. This leads to behaviors like chasing validation or trying to win a woman, which, as noted, causes men to already lose when they make her their target. The solution lies in shifting focus inward. Break free from romantic myths. Recognize that love is not about possessing or completing someone, but about mutual growth. Read works like Nietzsche's or modern psychology texts, for example, The Way of the Superior Man by David Data, to reframe your understanding of relationships. Cultivate emotional resilience. Prepare for the possibility of rejection or loss by building a strong sense of self. Practices like journaling, meditation, or therapy can help you process emotions without tying your worth to a woman's response. Learn from women directly. Engage in honest conversations with women in your life, friends, family, or partners, to understand their perspectives. Ask about their experiences and listen without judgment to gain insight into their emotional and strategic nature. Understanding the truth about women requires dismantling myths, embracing their emotional mastery, and respecting their strategic adaptability. Nietzsche's insights remind us to see women as complex humans, not idealized angels or submissive stereotypes. By cultivating self-possession, prioritizing purpose, and engaging with authenticity, men can align with women's true nature, fostering relationships built on mutual respect and freedom. The path to understanding women is not about control or conquest, but about self-mastery and genuine connection, where both partners thrive as individuals and as a unit. The nature of women is multifaceted, rooted in emotional mastery and strategic adaptation to societal constraints. Modern men's failures in relationships stem from a misunderstanding of this nature, compounded by romanticized ideals and a lack of self-possession. Nietzsche's philosophy illuminates these dynamics, critiquing men's tendency to idealize women while highlighting the power and complexity of women's emotional influence. To succeed in relationships, men must cultivate authenticity, discipline, and purpose, recognizing women not as weak or submissive, but as strategic and powerful partners. By embracing self-mastery and rejecting the need for external validation, men can forge meaningful connections that honor the true nature of women and themselves.